Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the July 13th, 2020 edition of Cyber Insecurity stream. My name is Neil Bridges. I'll be your host, your concierge, your valet for this evening's conversation into cybersecurity. Thanks everybody who is joining in for the first ever flagship stream. Appreciate everybody taking the time out of their schedule to come sit with me, whether you sit with me for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, or the entire 2-hour stream. We'll look to make this beneficial and educational time for everybody involved. For those who are watching on various platforms, you can catch us multicast streaming across Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook. Chat rooms are open for all of those mediums. We do have myself and other moderators that are in place ready to field, answer, and respond to questions as you have them. If there's anything that happens across the stream, if you got any questions about cybersecurity in general, please don't hesitate to shoot us a message in chat. We also have a Discord channel up and running as well. And so if we start to get any of our partners in that want to come in and do an interview and have a live chat as well, we'll be pulling them into Discord so that we can bring them into the stream as well. Before we kind of get started, I want to take just a few minutes to really kind of talk about, what the cyber insecurity stream is really all about, kind of why I did it, why I started it, what you can kind of expect from this moving forward. Not going to give you, life and times of my history and background. There's more than enough, reading material out there on that. Feel free to go read up on me. But there's a lot of opportunities that I've had, with which to share my cybersecurity experience with tons of folks. I've been an instructor for the United States Air Force. I've taught for the SANS Institute, talked at numerous conferences and things like that, and find that the easiest way to really be able to give back to the community is to really be able to talk with folks and be able to really share my experiences and the things that I've learned, the failures that I've had. I'm big on talking about failures and whatnot. And so that's a lot of why I want to do this, is to really kind of talk about, cybersecurity, talked about the organizations that I've had a privilege throughout my career to be a part of, talk about the things that we've been really good at, talk about ways that we've done a lot of the cool stuff that we've done, talk about ways that we've not been successful in stopping cyber attacks or things like that. But it's not just about what the larger enterprise organization can get out of this, but I find that there's tons of people out there that have questions about everything from how do I get into cybersecurity? What's the easiest way for me to get into it? How do I break into cybersecurity? What courses do I have to learn? What programming languages are the right programming languages to learn? Everything from those questions to, I've got, we've got folks who are mothers and fathers and sons and daughters and grandmothers, right? Watching this stream, who want to know, what antivirus should I use? Do they even know what antivirus is? What does cyber fraud look like? How do I know that I'm getting scammed out of my money? Why do scammers, target us and try to take our money from us? What is it that I should be doing to keep me, myself, my family safe from cyber attacks? There's a wide range of things that I don't think we focus on enough when it comes to how we talk about cyber as a community, or even when it comes to just looking at just how vast and how wide a lot of the problems are that we're trying to solve inside of our industry. And so I wanted to bring all of those years of experience. I wanted to bring a lot of the stuff that we had going on. I wanted to bring all of that stuff together to really kind of create a stream that spans a large number of interest, spans a large number of what it is everybody's trying to achieve as cybersecurity, whether you're coming into the career field, whether you could care less about, the day-to-day hacking that goes on, and just really how do you protect your money and your email and your Facebook pages and things like that. Whether you're a CISO or a CIO, that's looking to understand how to protect their organization. I think that that's something that we really want to focus on as well. I see Mage has dropped in with the first comments of the stream. Mage and I were chatting earlier on Discord. And he's a great example, right? He, she, I shouldn't genderize based on that, but he or she's a great example of, somebody who had a question on how to get into a specific area that was interested in him. He's at a juncture of his career and looking to understand what the next step is. And I think that there's so many people out there that are at that point in their career that, sometimes it's just beneficial to have more people to talk to and have a a larger perspective, and that's what a lot of this is geared towards. So Mage, appreciate you showing up for the stream. Looking forward to many more opportunities to chat with you in the future, and that's an example of the types of people that we're really trying to help here with this. With that being said, what you can kind of come to expect from this stream on a pretty regular basis. The goal of the stream is to stream 3 days a week. It'll be Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday from about 5 p.m. Central Standard Time in the United States to about 7 p.m. Central Standard Time in the United States. Once you have a consistent, reliable stream that you can, depend on a pretty regular basis to come sit down. We'll have an agenda on every stream that we kind of talk through. Today's agenda is posted kind of at the bottom of the screen that you can kind of see right there. We're going to talk about some things that are happening, in the daily news. It'll span a lot of topics on cybersecurity, and so hopefully it'll be of interest to a broad range of folks that we've got, watching the stream. We decided, since it's a flagship, stream, we'll go ahead and start tackling some of the pretty easy topics that are oftentimes at the top of everybody's wish list, right? Which is, what cybersecurity is and what cybersecurity isn't. We'll kind of try to debunk, a couple myths and a couple ideas of what cybersecurity is and what cybersecurity isn't. And then we'll close out with talking about how to get into cybersecurity as a career. And that's something that, it just kind of spawned from, the conversation that Mage and I were having, earlier in Discord. And so, we'll try to hit on that stream and see if we can't make that useful and relevant to everybody, at least from a short introduction. I promise you that won't be the last time we have that conversation. In future streams, you can expect that, we're going to have industry professionals here. I've already talked to several of my folks, my peers in the industry, got them super excited, super psyched up for this. They're excited to come give their long-term professional opinion. We're talking, folks who work at a lot of organizations that have a lot of influence inside the cybersecurity space. We're not, these aren't sales pitches. I promise you, this stream's not here to sell you, anything from any of these companies or anything like that. That's not what this is about. But, it's just an opportunity for those of us who have, definitely contributed a lot to this industry to kind of sit back and give that perspective and really kind of talk about it. We plan on really trying to challenge kind of the status quos when it comes to, how do we help, kind of figure out how to help folks find jobs. How do we help folks, decipher what recruiters are looking for? We plan on having just ordinary folks on, folks who, don't know a whole lot about cybersecurity, but have questions, and really try to get them to open up and learn and try to, see what goes on in the mind of somebody who doesn't think like some of us nerds who may be listening to this stream on a pretty regular basis. So as you can see, lots of things in plan, lots of things in store for this, and we hope that this becomes a staple if in your listening stream. As always, I know it's always hard to be regular and catch streams. We'll also be putting snippets of this as well as excerpts up on YouTube on a daily basis. If you like the content, hit that subscribe button, hit that follow button. If you're on Twitch or Facebook, like us on Facebook as well. Hit that sub on YouTube or hit that follow on Twitch, and get notified whenever we come online. I think one last topic to cover is I'm very much about the conversation. I'm very much about hearing from the community and for the folks who participate in the stream. As you can tell, if you chat, if you send messages, I'll do my absolute best to talk to them and cover them. If you send questions in, you can, chances are I'll definitely get to them and ask them. This is about you and making sure that you guys get the benefit out of this as much as possible. And so we want you to be, we want you to feel involved and welcomed in this. And so welcome to the stream. Welcome to the first ever one. And with that, we'll kind of jump right into some of the first topics that we want to cover today. We'll start with a couple of easy ones here. So for those who don't know or haven't heard of a company called KnowBe4, KnowBe4 is a fantastic company that is trying to help bring cybersecurity awareness, kind of a little bit more broader acceptance to to the masses that are out there. And very much kind of the mission here that you'll find from the stream. I probably should have mentioned that in the intro. One of the things you'll notice from the tagline, right, is demystifying cybersecurity. Me and the folks who I circle with and whatnot, we very much we very much believe that that folks try to make cybersecurity a little bit too mystical and a little bit too magical. They try to put a lot of buzzwords around cybersecurity. They try to put a lot of emphasis on things that do or don't make sense or aren't necessarily important and things like that. And so one of the constant things that you'll see very much coming out of this stream is how do we demystify cybersecurity? How do we make it less magical, if you will, than what it may seem? And I know there's going to be a lot of folks who probably get triggered and get their egos hurt a little bit, when it comes to thinking about that. But quite frankly, I don't care. It's because we've tried to shroud cybersecurity in this loom of mystery that what we've done is we've created an environment whereby folks feel like they don't understand it, or they can't understand it, and so therefore, if they can't understand it, then they don't pay attention to it. And I think that's why we have some of the problems, that we currently have inside of cybersecurity as it is. And so, KnowBe4 very much kind of follows that mantra, kind of follows that lead as well, as they really want to try to mainstream and bring a lot of attention to cybersecurity awareness. So let's talk about cybersecurity awareness first and foremost. I mean, the headline's up there. You can kind of skip to the headline if you want to. KnowBe4, offers $10,000 scholarship for Black Americans in cybersecurity. Let's talk about security awareness first, real quick. Education is key. I don't think anybody would argue with that at all. If we think about driving a car, if we think about owning a firearm, if we think about flying an airplane, right, all of those things require some form of education. Now, I'm not advocating that we need to get licenses to operate the internet, although I have heard some folks in my circle kind of joke about that, but I definitely don't think we need to go that far. But I will say that if you take a step back for a second and say that a car, average car is about 3,500 pounds in the U.S. Not sure what that would look like, equate to in kilograms in the U.K. But when somebody turns the age of 15 or 16, we do send them to a school where they can take a book lesson on signs, traffic laws, things of that nature, so they understand how to operate on the highway. And then we have them sit down and do a practical test, whereby they have to, demonstrate for, somebody that they can operate an automobile in a safe fashion, because they're going to get on the highway with millions and millions and millions of other drivers, out on the world, and be expected to drive a 3,500 pound car at speeds in excess of 40, 50, and 60 miles an hour, for long periods of time. seems like pretty dangerous topic, doesn't it? How come we don't take more time to educate folks on how to use the internet? If you think about your mobile devices, and I'll do the quintessential thing, right, where I hold up my phone and talk about how, the mobile device is the new personal carry device that's out there. Everything's on that device. You got your bank records, you've got, email, you've got email addresses. Inside your email, you probably got a password file, that you keep in the drafts folder, right? And you think you're being pretty sneaky with that one, right? Or if you're an iPhone user, you might have a keychain that you're using for a lot of your passwords on your iPhone. If you don't know what that is, we'll make sure to do a segment on password protection, keychains and password keepers and things like that. But anyway, your entire life is on your mobile device, and yet we're so freewheeling to download anything off of the App Store, whether you're an iPhone user or an Android user, it doesn't really matter. We're so freewheeling to download stuff and install it onto our phones and allow you've probably heard it 100 times, right, in terms of just how many overreaching permissions that are out there on apps like Facebook or Instagram, or the new rage right now is everybody's throwing a fit about TikTok and just how overreaching TikTok is. So with all these apps that seem to have way less restrictions than automobile makers do on a car, and with all these restrictions around driving a car that we don't seem to have with folks online personas, why are we not taking more precautions in terms of protecting folks who use mobile devices and things like that versus automobiles? One argument can be made, right, that automobiles kill people, and if I give up my credit card information or my personal information or private information over a mobile device, I'm not actually going to kill anybody. And I think that's a fair argument, but I think you're still overall missing the point that we've allowed ourselves to be desensitized to the threats of that the cybercrime organizations and whatnot are very, very happy that we're desensitized to. There's billions and billions of dollars that are actually going to cybercrime organizations. So there's one really good statistic that's out there that cybercrime is now more profitable than the drug trade. I want to say that again, make sure you heard that right. Cybercrime now is more profitable than the drug trade. That means that you can actually now make more money, doing, stealing from the elderly, stealing bank accounts from people, doing, these types of scams, stealing credit cards, and things like that, than you can from selling cocaine. Billions and billions and billions of dollars are in the circulation when it comes to cybercrime. And as organizations, having worked in multiple Fortune 100 companies and just worked in multiple companies in general, and even in the military in my years in the United States military, education and awareness is the most important way that we as an organization can communicate to the folks who are not nearly as cyber savvy as the rest of us how to watch for phishing emails, how to watch for malicious attachments. For those who are listening who may not understand that jargon, let's talk about what that jargon is, right? So if you get an email that has an attachment on it, your natural instinct, if you're not in this career field on a regular basis, is to open up that attachment, especially if it comes from somebody that you trust. You have a trusting relationship with somebody of your family, somebody that you work with, potentially your lawyer's office, whatever the case is. And because of that trust relationship, you have a tendency to open that attachment or click on that link and do whatever is said to be done inside of that email. And attackers constantly exploit that trust relationship. And so it's only through education and awareness, type of activities that we're actually really able to be successful in showing folks, what to look for in these types of malicious activities so that they can actually be more successful in stopping these cyber crimes. over the course of my career, I've built multiple security teams for Fortune 100 companies. And I want to tell you that the most important asset, most important, detection sensor that I have on the network are the people that are using that network on a day-to-day basis. Those people are seeing emails. Those people are getting emails sent to them. Those people are out on the internet, doing things out on the internet on a regular basis. And so it's because of them, because they are those frontline, detection mechanisms. They really are the most important, people in a company when it comes to detecting cyber attacks. And so education and awareness programs help us to really identify those people and keep them educated and make sure that they can be effective in our organization. Well, what about at home? How does that work at home? It's, and this is where Know Before really kind of comes into play, right? And this is what I think Know Before is actually really awesome for, right? Is, they have done a really, really good job of publicizing and publishing a lot of, publicly available free education material that's easily accessible in a centralized location that allows for you to go out there, look at it, digest it, bring it back to your family, talk to your kids about it, talk to your mothers and fathers about it, talk to your stepfathers and your stepmothers about it, and really start to bring education and awareness, really, really mainstream when it comes to having real conversations in your household. And it may seem like, that may seem overkill, right? To sit down and have a conversation with your kids about, what they should pay attention to on social media or what they should or shouldn't click on social media. But, you wouldn't shy away from having, those conversations with your kids if you're trying to have, adult conversations with them, how to prepare for adulthood, or, how to deal with difficult social situations, that we're dealing with in middle school and high school, or even college and things like that. And likewise for your grandparents and for your parents, for folks who are kind of in that age bracket of 55 or higher, right? Where, they didn't grow up with computers and IT technology like some of us did. And so you really have to help, pull them along in terms of, being more secure. Let me see if I can find the statistic for it. But there's a really, really, really good, statistic that's where it is. It's the FBI put out this statistic, and I can put a link in the description when we post this one out. But when they talk about elderly cybercrime, they talk about more than in 2018, most residents over the age of 60 were the primary targets of cybercrime by cyber criminals in all of 2018, right? And so the FBI's got a lot of good statistics on this, and to really kind of to drive that point home. But you've got to sit down, you've got to have that conversation with those folks and be able to say, this is how you recognize some of these things that people are trying to kind of exploit you for as an elderly person. So again, kind of Know Before is really awesome in that area. This is really awesome to see, kind of Know Before, putting together a sizable, scholarship for Black Americans in cybersecurity. We're already in a cybersecurity shortage already as a whole. When it comes to looking for talent inside of cybersecurity, I think just given some of the things that we've seen here recently, I think this is an awesome move by Know Before. One of the good statistics that you see down there, right, is that only 6% of African Americans work in STEM compared to an overall 11% of U.S. workforce. And so I think it gives us as a community a good opportunity to really recognize a chance to give back and try to elevate, some of our more diverse counterparts in terms of making sure that they are getting what they need to continue to be successful inside of this career field. I think there's tons of opportunity just in general when it comes to working inside of cybersecurity. I think we can all agree, who have been in this space for a long time, that we have failed the diversity meter when it comes to cybersecurity. This is a topic that I think we could get into a couple deep rabbit holes on if we're not careful. I think we've We traditionally were, as most of us have come from an IT field, and that's been a predominantly, masculine dominated area. I don't think we've done a really good job of being more diverse or more transparent as we've converted from that old IT way of doing things over into, kind of how we're doing things now and in the new world. So I think this is a fantastic move, and kudos to KnowBe4 for making that one happen. Going to move on to kind of our next topic, right? We're going to talk about so in the news today, talked about cybersecurity as we know it is about to change. I think that's a pretty good headline for really kind of our next topic. I think if we really talk about like what does it mean to say that cybersecurity as we know it is about to change, let's really take a step back and think about the world that we're in right now, right? So in March, of 2020, 70%, 80%, 90% of the world was thrust immediately into a completely different way of working and a completely different way of dealing with how they make it to the workforce, how they do their day-to-day job, how they cope with childcare, how they cope with education in the last half of the school year of 2019, and looks like with the way things are going as we go into the first half of the 2020 school year in the fall, it's looking pretty like we're going to have a different way of doing things as well. I think that way of that new way of operating, I was talking with a former coworker who she is traditionally an office worker. She goes to the office, administrative type of work. So she's a normal admin assistant for some for some big shot executive, and all of a sudden she has to go do her work remotely. She's never had to work remote before. She's never worked remote a day in her life. And so she has no idea how to deal with that, how to what does that look like from a lifestyle perspective. And so we can talk about the lifestyle changes all the way for a while here, but what those lifestyle changes really represent for us as well is opportunities as cybersecurity professionals to educate a lot of folks about how those ways of working and how we do things really changes how we view cybersecurity, how we implement cybersecurity, how we have a conversation around cybersecurity. This article is pretty good. Again, I'll include all the links of these when we post the video up on YouTube, so that you've got the reference material. But really, we talk about this right here, right? Telecommuting is the only way of working for many, and we talk about telecommunicating, right? We're talking about you wake up in the morning, you have your coffee, maybe go sit out on the balcony for a little bit, maybe read the newspaper, turn on the news and watch it, right? But then you sit down at that computer, you sit down and you go to work, and you are working from that desk from the time you sit down until the time you get up. You're using your home internet, which for some, may have been a challenge in the past. Internet is not a basic human right. Whether it should or shouldn't be is a completely different, story. And that's not what the focus of this on is. But, not everybody has graced or privileged to have internet at home. And so that becomes very problematic for folks. Folks are not used to working from home. They're not used to the challenges that come with, the distractions of being at home. From a cybersecurity perspective, now you have no idea where that device is. That device could be in Starbucks. That device could be in the library. That could device be in the office. It could be in your bedroom. We don't know. We don't know who's using that device. I used to work for a Fortune company, back in 2012, 2013. And this was old, and I don't say this in disparaging of any type of culture or mindset or anything else. And it's been verified by folks that even today I still, work with on a pretty regular basis, right? Is that in 2012 and 2013, poverty was so rampant in places like India that if you gave a worker a laptop, and they worked in a company in India, and that laptop went home with that worker, then because not many people had mobile technology, not many people had laptops and things like that. When that laptop hit the kitchen table in India, that became a family-owned device, and so everybody in that family would use it to look at Facebook, watch videos, whatever it is they wanted to do on a day-to-day basis. That's what that laptop was there for. And so, as a cybersecurity organization, you're kind of potentially thrust back into that environment where when that laptop goes home, you have no idea what it's going to get used for, or how it gets used, or who even uses that laptop, let alone what else is going on that network. We put a lot of time and effort and money in the corporate world in terms of trying to spend a lot of money in terms of seeing what other assets exist on a network, or seeing adjacent network traffic and things like that. And what ends up happening as a result is you send that laptop home, and that laptop has to exist on an island all by itself inside of that home. It needs to be able to communicate with all of the assets inside the corporate environment. It needs to be able to talk to whatever systems that it needs to talk to inside that corporate environment. And it needs to be resilient enough to be able to reside at home away from any type of IT support, for a longer length of time. I think that this kind of points to kind of this next one right here, right, in terms of the surge and adoption of decentralized cybersecurity. As folks are now not close to their primary office, their primary headquarter locations, you have to have IT support teams and support processes that are way more dispersed and way more spread out. If you think about a corporate office, it's maybe located in Chicago, but if you think about the 3,000 people or the 10,000 people that support that office in Chicago, those 10,000 people probably exist, anywhere from 1 to 50 miles outside of that office environment. And so, how do you have IT teams that are a little bit more spread out and a little bit more dispersed to be able to support any of those types of IT functions that may come about? Think global privacy. This one down here at the bottom, right? We're definitely going to have to look at. There we go. Global privacy, right? Global privacy regulations. For this may come as a difficult conversation for our folks who are typically in cybersecurity versus those who are not, right? A couple years ago, the European Union released a regulation, GDPR, that forced organizations around the world to be compliant with how the EU views a lot of its very stringent privacy regulations. And just this year, on January 1st of this year, California, put into operation their very first, kind of first in the United States privacy law called the California Consumer Protection Act, CCPA, and it's because of a lot of those privacy regulations that have forced organizations to handle your private data a little bit better. And so now, those organizations, those privacy elements were built with a construct of a way that we did business. It was vastly different than what it is right now. And so I think from a risk management perspective, and it's kind of highlighted here in this article, right, is, how in an area where we may do bring your own device, or, have a lot more shared responsibility from user privacy data perspective, do we adopt to a new way of doing things, inside of this mobile area? I won't read all of these to you. I think the only other one that I wanted to kind of hit on for folks and really kind of talk about, right, is this idea, right, that cloud will become more important than ever before. Working with an organization here recently that was actually pretty quick to pace in terms of getting things up in the cloud and running in the cloud, and utilizing Microsoft Office 365 and Azure technology and other things that made it pretty ready to be able to service its workforce from the cloud. I know there's lots of other organizations that are still heavily reliant on on-premise data centers, and because of those on-premise data centers, and because of the lack of ability to support a large number of remote workers, a lot of those on-premise technologies like SAP or other internal business critical applications become really problematic for organizations to get through, or to get to and utilize. And so that's where I think the cloud is going to end up becoming more narrow. When we talk about cloud threats, right? I think there's no shortage of articles and news pieces that are out there that talk about organizations like Capital One or other organizations that have had their private owned data exposed via misconfigured Amazon type of containers that have then led to some form of a data privacy incident or data privacy breach. And so one of the things that I think we're really going to crash into at some point in time, right, is this rush to cloud because of COVID is then going to quickly meet a security wall whereby, as we've tried to accelerate things to get it into the cloud quickly and try to make our workforce effective and efficient in their working from home scenario, we may have neglected or forgotten about or failed to implement a certain number of cloud controls that then invariably open up security threats to how we've done those cloud implementations. And so having standard configurations in the cloud, making sure that we're doing defense in depth, making sure that we understand how our cloud is configured, make sure that as we're standing up new assets inside the cloud that we're applying the right types of controls to them. All of these conversations are still conversations that we have to have, regardless of how fast we're working to try to do that. So lots of changes. I think this goes without saying, right, that cybersecurity is going to look vastly different. If those of you who are in this field haven't seen a difference now, as this way of living settles in and becomes more and more predominant, wouldn't be surprised if this ends up becoming a new way of life. So moving on to the next topic, I want to talk about the profile of a post-pandemic CISO. So for those listening, right, if you've not heard the term before, right, a CISO is a Chief Information Security Officer. Most companies these days have a Chief Information Security Officer. It's the highest profile, cybersecurity dude, right, in a company. Had the pleasure of working with many really, really good CISOs that are out there. Several of which I still talk to today. As well, for those who are looking at this, right, you'll see that this is dark reading. If you're not familiar with dark reading, I would highly recommend making that part of your daily read routine. Dark readings. They post some good stuff on Twitter. Follow them on Twitter. They're one of the better quick news reads that exist out there for cybersecurity stuff. So definitely encourage you to pick up dark reading. But when we think about the conversation we just had in terms of cybersecurity as a whole, that change that we talk about with cybersecurity is going to affect the workforce. It's going to affect us as cybersecurity professionals. It's going to affect everybody at home who has to deal with the companies, not just the big companies, but the small companies. And I think that's something we can have a completely different conversation on, as well as like, how does mom and pops, bakery, how do they, not only operate their bakery in a COVID time period, but how are they securing their digital assets in a COVID time period? If you've got a small accounting firm or small legal firm that's maybe got like 4 or 5, 6 employees, how are you coping with not just the change from a workforce perspective, but also, from a cybersecurity perspective, how are you changing the way that you're protecting your law firm or your accountant in a COVID time period? Same thing could be said for CISO when we talk about those changes that are coming to, how organizations do business. How are CISOs having to, refocus their efforts in terms of protecting an organization and being able to provide information security and cybersecurity, counsel and advice to the board of directors, and to the chief financial officer of those organizations, to be able to provide the right amount of cybersecurity. And so this is a really good article. It talks about the profile, right, of a post-pandemic CISO. It's a good points in here in terms of like focusing on, an emphasis on physical security may end up becoming the norm, right? We worry about physical security because of, health related issues and, how do we protect the physical safety of people, social distancing, rules and things of that nature. And how do we make sure that, is all staying, within spec, when it comes to that, but also, a focus on the mental health and regardless of any type of political spectrum in which you want to look at mental health as an issue on is, it gets back to what I was saying before in terms of people having to adopt to a new way of working. Most people are not used to working from home on a regular basis. Most people are not used to, having to interact with folks on a social basis. What this article really talks about is the stress, the mental health stress that CISOs are under. There's another really good statistic that's out there. I was trying to find it real quick on the stream. I should have this one prepared, but I didn't. There it is. 88% of all CISOs that are out there that they test as part of this, right, are what they refer to as tremendously stressed, right? If there's any CISOs that are listening to this, or any CISOs that want to come in and talk about the stress levels that they have, that'd probably be a good segment for us to do. Let's talk about CISO stress for a second. They are the single point of failure in an organization for all things cybersecurity related. That means that anytime you see anything in the news as it relates to a breach, think Target, think Home Depot, think Anthem, think of any of the major breaches that are out there. The first person that gets called into the principal's office to have to answer for that is the chief information security officer. And so with that level of stress in mind, they have a lot on their plate in terms of how do they look across the organization and balance their ability to, manage the risk of a cyber attack, as well as making sure that the business is still successful and still able to function and be profitable in organizations. So that's quite a hefty responsibility. I'll give you another example of some of the stresses that CISOs are under. I was a part of an organization that had been in business for well over 100 years. That organization had been profitable, done very, very well for its shareholders for well over 100 years. It's not uncommon for organizations like that to take a step back and say, well, why do I need to invest hundreds of millions of dollars in cybersecurity if in 100 years I've been profitable and successful and not had a cyber attack? What's the value of that input? And that's a hard thing for CISOs and most cybersecurity professionals to come to grips with, to try to answer. And so that adds to the stress as well. And so, then having to do that in a remote work environment, whereby 70 to 80 to 90% of your workforce is completely and totally remote, really adds a completely new level of stress to that as well. And so I think the profile of a CISO is going to change just in terms of their ability to handle mental stress and being able to handle dealing with that. Last but not least, one of the things that I kind of want to cover on this, and you heard me say it in one of the other sections, right, is, the attack surface must be redefined. When we talk about the attack surface, we just talk about what is available for a hacker or cyber criminal, what's publicly available for them on the internet to be able to attack into an organization. we talk about web pages, we talk about, users from a phishing perspective. We talk about, misconfigured, cloud configurations and things like that. Um, when we think about in a COVID world and in a COVID type environment, in this pandemic environment, your attack surface is massive now, because now you have cloud assets you have to worry about. You have people that are scattered in their homes throughout. A lot of the things that we just talked about before in the previous segment, all matter here. And so as a CISO now, it was pretty easy being relative, depending on how you were looking at things, to know where your attack surface was, right? You had the four walls of your office building, 4 walls of your data center. Most of the people who would be accessing your systems, right, would be in those 4 walls, and from a relatively easy perspective, you could manage the risk in that. But now that you've got 70, 80 to 90% of your workforce, scattered about everywhere, that becomes a lot harder to wrap your hands around. And so, going to definitely see a lot of changes, in that area. And so, good article there in terms of post-pandemic CISO. With that, we've reached the end of this first kind of segment on the agenda. Head over to the chat room and see, kind of if we missed anything in chat. I see Confusion 96 over on Twitch. Do you have this PDF for us to download? Which PDF were you referring to? And I'll be more than happy to provide a link to the PDF, or if you're looking for something specific. Oh, the CISO one? Yeah, absolutely. You talk about the study when it regards to the stress. Absolutely, we can definitely provide you. Let me see if I can get that link for you real quick. Here you go. Link coming into to chat right now. If it doesn't come through, I'll post it individually over on Twitch. Thanks for the comments. Glad you're enjoying the stream. Hopefully to see you around a lot more. Great if you're starting to roll in cybersecurity. That's exactly why we're doing the stream. You'll see some of the topics that we've got for today. There we go. One of the topics that we've got for today really kind of talks about starting a career in cybersecurity. If you've got some specific questions, I'm about to take a quick 2-minute break and just kind of take a break for about 2 minutes. If you want to put those into chat, I'll be more than happy to answer them specifically. But welcome to the stream. Hope to see you around a lot more. And with that, we'll take about 2 minutes worth of a break, and I'll be right back. All right. Welcome back, everybody, to the cyber insecurity stream. Just got done taking our first break of the night. We'll try to do these, roughly about every 30 minutes. That first one went a little long. Just trying to get some of the logistics knocked out and whatnot. So we'll try to take these, so everybody can get up and stretch their legs if they really want to. Let's roll into the second topic that we've got for tonight. I see some. Oh no, don't worry about the wall of text confusion. I appreciate it. I see your questions there. Hopefully, you'll be able to stick around for the full stream. If not, don't hesitate to hop on over to the YouTube channel. Subscribe to that. We'll put up highlights from this conversation. The stream over on YouTube, and you can catch it after the fact if you missed that part of the stream. But hopefully stick around. If not, remind everybody as well. Don't forget to smash that like, smash that follow, smash that subscribe button. We are multicast streaming across 3 different platforms: Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook. Feel free. We're still waiting on LinkedIn to give us our approval. To live stream through LinkedIn, but once that happens, we'll be streaming on LinkedIn as well. Confusion asked a really good question: which platform do we prefer? Honestly, we're in this to try to hit as many people as possible from a demographic perspective. That's why we chose to multicast this stream. We want to hit people on platforms that resonate with them. Twitch is my preferred platform. But we know, folks, kind of been doing the research for this and trying to make sure that we were as successful as possible. We wanted to make sure that we hit as many of the demographics as possible. As I mentioned, we're trying to demystify cyber. Right. And so that's why we've chose to also, streamed it to Facebook and, put it. Oh yeah, that's my humidifier. Didn't realize that. I promise the house isn't on fire. Probably could. I'll turn that smoke down a little bit on the next break. Hopefully that's not too. Yeah, don't panic. You don't have to call the police on me. There's no fire at the house. I promise. But that's why we're trying to multicast stream across a lot of different platforms, as we want to try to really demystify cyber for folks and make it consumable for the masses. So spread the word. This isn't, saw a lot of your questions, confusion, and those are very, very good questions. We'll definitely dig into them. This is for folks like yourself. We had more individuals on asking questions earlier in the stream. And things like that. And so, definitely spread the word, let everybody know that this is pretty broad reaching. Some of the things that we'll do in the stream in the future, I'm, former hacker, former pen tester, built and ran a large number of pen testing and red teaming teams throughout my entire career. You'll definitely see me get into some of the weeds and some of the future streams in terms of how to do certain things, new techniques that are come out, new tactics and things like that. I've done numerous exploit development, work in the past. I've released one CV, 10 a day to my name, and things like that. And so we'll definitely get deep into that, but we're also going to talk about like how to protect your mom and your grandma from cybersecurity scams. And so, we really want this to be, a stream of, to encompass a lot of folks and try to bring more relevant cybersecurity conversation to the masses. So, appreciate everybody showing up for that. Let's hit our next topic, since we're talking about cybersecurity, and before we get into kind of the larger section of the stream, right, which is how do I get into cybersecurity as a career, which has been really kind of the topic of interest from folks who have participated in that stream today, right, is what cybersecurity is and what cybersecurity isn't. Cybersecurity is not mysterious, other than what we as an industry have a tendency to hide behind that shroud of mystery, if you will, when it comes to cybersecurity. It confuses a lot of people. But it doesn't confuse people for the right reason. It confuses people because I think we as an industry have not done the right things to educate folks on what cybersecurity and what cybersecurity is and what it isn't. People oftentimes don't know to associate cybersecurity with hacking. Not that I think that they should, but if you were to say, hey, there was this giant hack attack on Target, people would say, oh my God, who hacked into Target? Versus if you say there was a massive cyber attack on Target, there's probably a large group of people out there that would say, well, what's a cyber attack? What does that mean? Not realizing that, from a nomenclature perspective, they're actually probably very, very similar stuff. And so, I think that's one of the impetus for kind of that question, right? Is what is cybersecurity? At its core, right, at the heart of it, right, cybersecurity is the ability for us to, try to do our best to protect people or organizations or data from their inadvertent disclosure to bad guys. And that's probably a lot of really big words, and it's probably a little bit of a word salad, but let's break that down a little bit, right? Let's break that down into what that really means, right? What we're talking about here is, if you do your business with a bank, right? Your bank deals with your money on a regular basis. Your bank deals with, your personal information. They've got your name, your address, your social security number, things like that. You want to have some assurance as a person, right, that data is protected. Cybersecurity is the organizational mechanism or the system of mechanisms that are in place to try to protect your personal information in organizations like the bank. Now, there's lots that goes into this. Folks who watch this stream or streams similar to this, and this is going to probably be one of those like hashtag unpopular opinions, right? When people hear cybersecurity, they instantly think hacking, and they think, oh, I want to go do that because I want to go hack because it's cool. One of the things that I think was prompted me to start this stream, right, is that there's 101 YouTube videos in there on how to hack. There's 101 resources in there on how to hack. There are very, very, very few in comparison resources on how to protect and how to defend. There's very, very few resources on risk management and how to do risk management in an organization. And a lot of that is because hacking is cool. We have sensationalized hacking through, the Matrix, through Swordfish, through hackers. We'll do a poll in one of the future streams, right? We'll see, what the most popular hacking movies are from folks on the stream at some point in time in the future. See if anybody remembers a movie called Sneakers with Robert Redford in it. See if anybody, equates that one on there. Yes, this entire VOD will be available on YouTube. Absolutely confusion. Promise it'll be on YouTube. No, don't worry about taking notes. But because we've sensationalized hacking so much, right? That's what everybody thinks they want to do in cybersecurity. When you look at the act of doing cybersecurity and protecting an organization, and that's probably what I should probably do in one of the future streams, right? Is kind of show you guys an org chart of what a cybersecurity organization goes on and what all is involved inside of a cybersecurity organization. If we talk about a CISO, which you heard me mention in the previous section when we talked about, the role that a CISO plays in an organization, typically underneath the CISO, you're really kind of broken down into a couple of different elements inside of an organization, right? You've got your risk management organization. You've probably got privacy. You probably have, a governance and policy team. You've probably got a security architecture and engineering team, and then you've got your security operations team. Buried inside of that security operations team, so if you think about an org chart, right, and you think about those teams spread out across the org chart like that, and over here on the right hand side, right, you've got your security operations team. Now inside your security operations team, you've probably got incident response. You've got folks who run the server technologies team. You've got threat intelligence, threat hunting, and things like that. Buried way, way, way down here in the organization, that's where pen testing is, right? And I would even challenge the industry that most organizations struggle to justify having dedicated penetration testing teams. And so while hacking is the most sensationalized and definitely the thing that everybody thinks it is what they want to do, that's not everything that um, is inside of cybersecurity as a career or as an entity inside of an organization. And so really try to keep in mind that when you're thinking about a cybersecurity career, and I'll get into this a little bit differently, but what cybersecurity isn't just about hacking. There is so much, and one of the things I gave this to Mage, who commented earlier in terms as he was watching the stream, and Mage and I were having a conversation on Discord, earlier about his cybersecurity career. If you think about an ocean that's a mile wide and a mile deep, and you're out on a boat in the middle of the ocean, that's how big cybersecurity is, right? You might be fishing right in your one little area inside of that lake, and catching one particular type of fish because that's the type of fish that appeals to you. But the cybersecurity is so much bigger and so much more broader than what that is right there. And so, when you think about it, just think about how big that is. What cybersecurity should be more of, which is a completely different topic, completely different conversation, right? Is we should be having more risk conversations about cybersecurity. That's a hard topic that we have a hard time contending with inside of this industry. Is we don't have enough risk-based conversations, and nobody likes that. Nobody likes that word. When we think about most security practitioners, I'll self-deprecate on this one. I was in that boat when I first started my cybersecurity career. When I got out of the Air Force, I spent 10 years, inside the Air Force, and a large portion of that was working for U.S. Cyber Command. When I got out, and was leading red teams and pen testing teams, for several Fortune companies out there, it's like, why are we fixing all the vulnerabilities? Yes, I can show you that you can be hacked by Chinese and Iranian APT. Why aren't you doing something about it? Why don't you care about it? Because we think so small in terms of trying to solve those problems for our organization, and we fail to think just a little bit bigger about risk management in the organization as a whole. And so what I think cybersecurity isn't is cybersecurity isn't thinking enough about, how do you manage risk inside of an organization? And I did a podcast last week. I can add a link if somebody's interested in listening to the podcast from last week, where I referenced a CISO that I used to work for, several companies ago. And he had a fantastic saying. I'll continue to give him credit for saying that. So the CISO is Bobby Ford. He's currently the CISO of Unilever. He's a very, very charismatic and very risk-minded CISO. Feel free to go look him up out on LinkedIn and follow him, and tell him that I was using his name in vain, on a stream. But he had a saying, and his saying was, our job in cybersecurity is to enable the business to take risk. So take a minute to think about that, right? Our role in cybersecurity is to enable the business to take risk. If anybody listening to the stream or listening to this VOD, in the next couple of days, right, it is old school IT, right? We came from the IT realm where we did IT before cybersecurity was a big thing. We were always the no group, right? Can I have a Winamp on my computer? No. Can I load BitTorrent on my computer? No. Right? We were always the very no organization, right? Those were even back in the IT days. It doesn't even have to be even today on cybersecurity. Folks, if I've sat in numerous meetings with cybersecurity professionals who are like, yeah, we've got a requirement from this hospital. We have to do a point-to-point VPN, and we're going to need an exception in the firewall for this particular VPN application to talk to this hospital. And before the cybersecurity team ever hears anything else out of that organization, the words out of their mouth are no. Right? We can't be the organization of no anymore. God, I wish I should text Bobby and see if he wants to come sit on this stream right now, because I'm gonna steal another one of his analogies. Right, is, if I want to go to the south side of Chicago, right, and politics aside, right, the south side of Chicago is pretty dangerous, but if I want to go to the south side of Chicago and I hired you to be my bodyguard, right, and it said, take me to south side of Chicago, would you tell me no? I mean, I'm paying you to provide me with security. You can't tell me no. I have a need. I have a business requirement to go to the south side of Chicago. You have to figure out how to protect me. And so what cybersecurity is, or needs to be, is cybersecurity needs to be that organization that figures out how to enable the business to take risk. And so I'll kind of leave you with that, with that thought when it comes to what cybersecurity is and what cybersecurity isn't. Because I think we don't have a really good understanding. I think we're still immature from a career field perspective in terms of understanding what cybersecurity is and what cybersecurity isn't. I think until we find our identity more, I think until we, grow up, right, a little bit inside of our own little world, I think we're going to continue to struggle to find a lack of adoption inside of organizations. We're going to find a lack of understanding for what it is that we do. From a personal perspective, talking to the folks who don't do cybersecurity on a regular basis, right? Talking to the moms and the dads and the brothers and the sisters that are out there. Look, cybersecurity is just trying to keep you safe, right? It's a, we live in a digital world these days and age, right? You get your phone, you've got your TikToks, you've got your Facey Spaces and your my bookiegrams, whatever you want to call them, right? Those give us an unprecedented amount of digital connections to the entire planet. There's a trying to find a good article that I can show you guys, as well. And this will be one for both the millennials as well as the old timers in this space, right? But I want to show you what we're protecting you from, right? And this is, let's see if we can get this to come up on stream over here. Not in a, I'm going to make the ad go away. Apparently we're going to be there. We got to make the ad go away. Okay. See if I can do this slowly. There we go. Oh, see, the ad comes back. All right. So that's a terrible website. I may have to find a different website for that one. But anyway, for those who didn't grow up with Nigerian prince scams, there was a very, 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 very common scam, that was out there. It was called a 419 scam. The 419 scam was this scam whereby you would get an email from a Nigerian prince who needed somewhere to save his money, and he was willing to give you a portion of his money so that you could give him your bank account and he would put some of that money in there, and then you just simply needed to go to Western Union or somewhere like that and send some of that money back to him. And so as a result of that, actually, we'll do it with this one that way. You don't necessarily have to see the ad so much. There we go. So as a result of that, that led to several people, lots of people getting ripped off by these folks. This is an article for a guy, and take a look at the name on the back of his robe there, right? Hush Puppy. That was his Instagram name. He was a Nigerian-born native who was a prolific Nigerian scammer, using not just scams like this, but also romance scams, whereby he would trick unsuspecting men and women. It was definitely not a unisexual thing. And he would run a network of folks who would build connections with folks and ultimately scam them out of hundreds of millions of dollars. He was recently arrested. This was an article, 1 day ago. He was recently arrested as part of a large, massive undercover operation, multinational. He was arrested in Dubai. And you can see they had no problem, flaunting his lavish lifestyle out on Instagram and whatnot, to talk about just how rich he was, basically making from scamming money out of people. And so for those who are not in this career field, for those who are trying to think about, well, how does this apply to my family, or how does this apply to, what I've got going on a regular basis? Cybersecurity is about protecting you from guys like this. Like, this is a real predator that is out there, trying to take your money through scams. And, cybersecurity is trying to make you aware of these types of activities so that you can try to protect your digital existence. All the money that he got, all the money that was scammed out of these people was all made over the internet, whether it was through email, whether it was through fake video chats, whether it was through fake chat rooms, with people that didn't exist, all across the country. All of that money was made through a lack of awareness in the cybersecurity industry. And so, very much so, when we talk about, how does cybersecurity pertain to everybody? It's not just a corporate problem. It very much is a personal problem too. And, that's probably a good place to leave it there. If anybody's got specific questions around, cybercrime, that we can hit on here, I'd be more than happy to hear of them in chat and whatnot. But, we could go into some pretty deep rabbit holes when it comes to that. All right. With that, we'll kind of get into our flagship conversation, right? Which is, how do I get into cybersecurity as a career? Thanks, Confusion. I appreciate it. Actually, let's hit chat real quick. Let's see if there's anything else in chat. Anything on Discord. Thanks, Confession. Appreciate you. Appreciate the comments there. Okay. No other questions. We'll go ahead and push into, how do I get into cybersecurity as a career? I will absolutely admit, hands down, unequivocally, this is the number one question that I get asked anytime, anywhere, whether I speak at conferences, whether I go to dinner with friends, whether I go to dinner with I've done several mentoring, sessions with high school kids and college kids, and I've guest spoken at numerous universities and whatnot. And there's always the conversation of, how do I get into cybersecurity as a career? I want to talk about my history a little bit and how I got into cybersecurity. Not that I think that everybody should follow my path. As a matter of fact, I don't think anybody should absolutely follow my path. I think my path was too hard. And I say that jokingly. There's probably a lot of, purist and other old farts like myself that have been in cybersecurity for a while who are probably going to disagree with this. But I want to explain to you my past, so that you can better understand why it is that I feel the way it is that I do about getting into this career field. So I started in cyber in the 90s. Now, in the 90s, cyber did not exist, right? I can only say that in retrospect because we now have this career called cyber. But in the 90s, my dad stuck a computer in front of me and said, "Here, figure this thing out." And before long, I was writing my very first, password brute forcer, to log into bulletin board systems. I got fortunate throughout my career. I joined the Air Force in the early 2000s after September 11th. But, between the 90s and that time period, I was a network admin, or I was a graphical user designer for several companies. And security just happened to be something that, we did just because it was interesting to us. So I used to do graphical user interface design for HVAC systems out of North Carolina. And, it was written, in a very, very easy, it was written in HTML. But I was still playing around with cross-site scripting and trying to write my user interfaces with cross-site scripting, even though I had no proof or data or knowledge of, what a pen test was or whether anybody would actually even be trying to execute cross-site scripting on those user interfaces. Similarly, I went to work for a startup in the early 2000s where I was a network admin for them. We didn't have security, engineers, in this startup. When we programmed up the routers and the firewalls, when we did, Active Directory configurations, when we had domain controllers back in the old Windows NT days, God, I'm really aging myself on this one. Security was just something that we did because we knew it was the right thing to do. And it wasn't actually until I was in the Air Force that I actually got into cybersecurity as a career, knowing where you had it. It was a nomiker. You could say that this is a career. You are doing cybersecurity on a day-to-day basis. And so anybody who tells you that, like, you've got to suck dirt to get into cybersecurity, I think that's problem number one that we have in this industry. I think that because of the fact that we have, university degrees now, specifically tailored towards information security and specifically tailored towards cybersecurity. University of Maryland has both a bachelor's degree and a master's degree in cybersecurity. I think it is because of that mainstream acceptance now into cybersecurity that a lot of us old dogs that if you come across any old dog that tells you that you got to suck dirt like the rest of us to get into cybersecurity, those are folks that haven't accepted reality that because it's as mainstream as it is, you no longer have to suck dirt to get into cybersecurity. And so I think that's kind of like, realization number one is that there's too many egos that we have inside of cybersecurity that think that you've got to do it the exact same way, that we did it, when we were growing up. Also, with that being said, right, thanks, Confusion. Thanks for checking in. Have a good night. Appreciate you, stopping in by for the stream. I'm looking forward to chatting with you in the future. And so because of that, right. So getting into that, getting into cybersecurity and starting to do it in the Air Force, was a real eye opener to me of the way that the world has evolved and, having a dedicated career path in cybersecurity. By the way, Confusion, as you log off for the night, I will answer your questions. I will VOD this video up and put it on YouTube, and so I'll get your questions answered for you, and you'll be able to catch those on the VOD. So thanks again for that. And so as cybersecurity has evolved, right, I think I think one of the things that we've got to realize is that we now have to change the way in which we encourage folks to get into cybersecurity, right? You don't have a plumber who tells somebody who wants to get involved in figuring out how to be a plumber, right, that they need to go out there and find a leaking house and figure out how to fix it on their own if they want to be a plumber, right? They send them to a vocational school and they send them to all of this training that they need to do so that they can go be, a good plumber. And so I think we've got to really change our mindset when it comes to how do we encourage folks to get into cybersecurity and how to get into it as a career. The fact of the matter is that cybersecurity is here to stay, right? Cybersecurity is as much of our day-to-day life and as part of our day-to-day conversations, as anybody else. And so, that's the whole reason, again, I get back to why we started the stream, right, is that we want to have cybersecurity as part of those day-to-day conversations. And so as such, we've got to start treating cybersecurity careers and folks who want to get into cybersecurity much the same way that we want to, have those conversations with our kids about any other career topic. So taking a step back, that's kind of my story about, how I got into cybersecurity. It was very much an accident. Talked to numerous people who've gotten into it, equally as accidental. And then there's definitely been people that I've talked to that have made a very pointed distinction about, choosing to be in cybersecurity. Those of you who are out there listening right now that are trying to make that decision on getting into cybersecurity and how to go about doing it, I kind of go back to what we were talking about before in the previous section, which is what is cybersecurity is and what cybersecurity isn't. It's very, very easy to get caught up in saying, well, I want to get into cybersecurity because I like to hack. Admirable, but slightly misguided. And again, that's definitely going to be an unpopular opinion. That's not the only reason to get into cybersecurity. We should want to get into cybersecurity, because you have, a propensity to solve problems, because you have a propensity to think analytical, because you have a propensity to think in a very risk-based fashion, and understand the risk of an organization, and understand how to help an organization navigate that risk, and to be successful in their mission through navigating through that risk. There are lots of career paths when it comes to cybersecurity. If you missed the first section of the video, one of the analogies that I gave about getting into cybersecurity, right, is that cybersecurity is an ocean that's a mile wide and a mile deep, and you're just on this one little dinghy, one little fishing boat out in the middle of that ocean, fishing for your type of fish. And whether you go, a foot deep, 2 feet deep, or you go that full mile deep, can really determine how deep you get into a cybersecurity career field. Nobody, I don't care who they are in this industry, if we're using that ocean analogy, nobody has expertise in the entire mile by mile section of that ocean. I don't care how long you've been in this industry. I don't care how good you are. Nobody has that level of expertise in cybersecurity. And so don't let anybody, lie to you or tell you otherwise. And so one of the hardest parts is, with cybersecurity, the hardest question that I get asked, and the hardest question that I have to answer is, how do I get started? So let's start with that. Number one, how do I get started? Honestly, the number one thing that you can do to get started is to find what interests you. And I know that seems like a cop-out answer, and I promise you it's not. Even if it is hacking, even if it's hacking and pen testing, start with hacking and pen testing. Start learning Kali Linux. Go out there, find Kali Linux. Go do any of the courses that are out there. eLearn Security is a great example of courses that you can take out there. Go start taking courses. Go to YouTube, right? Start looking at YouTube videos on hacking, but don't think that you want to be a hacker just because it's cool and there's a lot of information out there. Take that information and use that analytical process, and kind of put it to the test. When I talk about that, it's like, if and watching these videos, you find out that you love malware and you love understanding how malware works, and you're interested in writing malware, you're interested in writing viruses. You're probably also interested in reverse engineering malware, and you're reverse engineering, viruses and things like that. Start to research that stuff and start to go down that thread and pull on that thread. Let's say that you get to a point on that thread and it gets really boring for you, or you lose interest in that. Maybe go back to the hacking, go back and look at the methodology of, pen testing, and maybe all of a sudden you realize that you like OSINT, or open source intelligence gathering. And so you start to go down the open source intelligence gathering. You may find that you may end up in a career in intelligence. And then, honestly, you may end up in a career in intelligence, but then you may backtrack out of that career into something else as you dive more into, that career in intelligence. Let's say that you're not very technical, and that's fine. One of the things I probably should have mentioned in what cybersecurity is and cybersecurity isn't is this misconception that cybersecurity is 100% technical. There's actually some very good business tracks that are out there when it comes to cybersecurity, right? Whether we talk about being, in a risk organization, right? How do you be part of an organization whereby you do risk assessments, which are very similar to penetration testing, just without the technical aspect of it? How do you, how do you look at an organization's risk profile and help them understand the return on investment from making certain types of risk decisions as they pair with the cybersecurity controls that are put in place? There's cybersecurity program managements, right, where you get to be in charge of, the entirety of a program deployment. Let's say that an organization wants to deploy a new identity and access management program. You could be an identity and access management person, or you can be a program lead, program management that builds and establishes and an entire, identity and access management program. We even have some business related tracks for things like fraud prevention. These are huge inside of banks and other financial organizations, whereby it's very FBI-ish, right? It's very police work, investigative type stuff. Not necessarily technical, but you're investigating fraud. There's a lot of anti-money laundering stuff, and especially with the rise of crypto, and the rise of a lot of the things that are digital currencies, digital money laundering, lots of good stuff out there. That fraud prevention and fraud management is something really interesting that you can get into that doesn't require a large amount of technical skills. I think everybody can beat up the technical track of cybersecurity, right? Whether we talk about scripting and programming, whether we talk about cryptography, any of the network defense stuff. There's tons of stuff that can be had across on the on the technical side that I think you can find tons of data points for. And so really find that thread and then start to pull on that thread. So point number 2, just to kind of talk about, some very specific points about getting started in cybersecurity. One of the problems that, some of the older folks in this generation and in this career field will tell you is, well, we didn't have Google when we started. I hate that excuse. We didn't have Google. No, we didn't. But this generation, these people this day and age, they do have Google. And so I would encourage you that you should use your Google. That's not from like an egocentric perspective, but there is so much to learn out there. You couldn't consume it all in a day. My daily routine for those, one of the questions I get asked very frequently is what is my daily routine of staying up to date on topics and staying interested? I'll give it to you, right? Reddit, Twitter, and LinkedIn, right? And that's not the entirety of it, but that's where I start. And then same thing that I just told you before in point number 1, right, was find a thread and pull on it. So you start at those 3 levels and you find a thread and you pull on it, right? Don't just take everything at face value on those 3 platforms by any stretch of the imagination. But let's say that you go to Twitter and you find somebody who's talking about a brand new tactic, technique, or procedure, right? Somebody posts something on GitHub to talk about a new hack or a new way of doing things, right? Pull on that thread and really go to that page, go look at that code, go look at that resource and figure out how they're doing it. And that may open up some more, parts of your brain that help you understand what it is about this career field that attracts you and that you want to be a part of. But use those resources. I think one of the big things that I would tell new folks coming into this career field that I think they've, that they don't take into consideration very well, right, is just the amount of resources that are out there for folks to educate themselves on. Now, that doesn't mean don't ever ask questions. As a matter of fact, one of the primary reasons why I started this chat, right, was to give folks a more readily accessible resource, whether they're coming into the career field or whether they're, an outsider looking at this career field. I see we've got some people from Facebook who are joining the event right now. I'm sure that this is, a myriad of, folks who may be in the career field, but are probably also folks who are just interested in the career field or interested in how to protect themselves. And so, having that venue that you can go and talk to folks on, I think is incredibly important. And so, when you go to ask people cybersecurity questions, we need to be more open and more respectful of folks who are coming in and wanting to have that conversation. So point number 2, definitely make more use of, the resources that are out there. I think kind of as a 2.A, right, to that one, if I made a 2.A to this, right, is, if you're on the technical side of things and you want to do more technical stuff with cybersecurity, don't underestimate the value of, putting your hands on a keyboard. Create a lab environment. Back in my day, I promise you I won't use that term very frequently on this stream. We had to rely on 50 computers. If we wanted to be able to build a lab, every lab machine had to be its own individual computer. And then we eventually got to VMs, and then computing power got to be so awesome these day and age, right? Where, you can probably on most laptops these days, if you got like a MacBook Pro or, a decent, mid-sized laptop, you can get away with having, a Kali VM for your hacking machine and a Windows machine on the same laptop, and there's your lab environment right there. So don't underestimate the value of having your own lab equipment to get your hands dirty and get your hands on things. On the non-technical side, slightly harder, other than reading a lot of reports and really just trying to wrap your head around some of the things that are happening in the industry, from that perspective. Let's say that you've done those things. Let's say that you've started on a thread. So point number one, you've started on a thread, right? You're in this career field. You're sitting on the outside of this career field. You're looking to get into it. You found a thread. You started to pull on a thread. Okay, you're now into a thread. You're now watching videos on YouTube. You're watching my stream on a regular basis. We're having conversations in Discord about it. What do you do next? This is the time that I think that you start to reach out and look for some of the cybersecurity certifications that are out there. Confusion in chat earlier, he had a point, right? He's currently learning the basics from a Udemy course. It's pretty fleshed out. But he's asking for other free online resources. So I'd go to point number 2, right? That's a fantastic question to ask Confusion. That's exactly the right way to get in his career field, right? Is you've done your research. You're now out there on Udemy. You're working with something like Insecurity, OffSec, SANS, if you can afford it, right? You're out there getting those certifications. It's only until point 3 that I would really focus on, where do you spend your money, from an education perspective. Over the course of my career, I've had the privilege of mentoring a lot of junior folks coming up into this organization or into multiple organizations. They almost always come to me, almost immediately, and say, I'd like to do this, or I'd like to do that. And whenever they say that, my first question is, well, how much have you self-learned first? I'll give you an example. I had, an incident response analyst that worked for me a number of years ago, and we had just stood up a pen testing program inside of our security operations team. And he came to me after one of our first pen test engagements, and he really, really, really liked, watching the pen test guys work and kind of do their thing. And he said, I want to do that. I'd like to take a SANS class to go do that. My first answer to him was no. I am sure everybody on this stream hates me right now. He couldn't tell me any of the other self-learning things that he had done prior to asking me to send him to a SANS class. And that's not an elitism. That's not egotism. That's just a sheer abundance of free information, right? That's out there that can help you get into this. The arguments for coursewares, they're structured. Yeah, absolutely they are. There's tons of videos that are out there that are structured. There's tons of free educational platforms that are out there that are structured. There are, tons of hands-on capture the flag events out there that are structured. And they're all free. And I think there's been a lot of, we've been hesitant to actuate on a lot of the free sources because we still have that old mentality that wants to run and get a cert to the back of our name. And so I would discourage anybody watching this stream who's trying to get into the career field, don't chase certs. Are certs valuable? Absolutely. Are they important? Debatable. I did a board presentation for an organization several weeks ago. And one of the things that I pointed out to them was that actually it was the CEO of Cybersecurity had made a statement that had said certifications are becoming less and less important, and what is becoming important is folks who are able to learn and understand and demonstrate real skills. And so when you look across Udemy, which I'm glad to see folks in chat going to Udemy and things like that, look at Pentester Academy, you look at SANS, you look at things like that. Those are great to get those bona fides next to your name, but most organizations are really starting to look for those hands-on practical level experience. And so I would encourage you to, talk about the things that you're doing in your spare time. Talk about the labs you're building up. Talk about the projects you're participating in. Talk about the capture the flags that you're participating in. I think you'll find that those are much more impactful, from a career perspective because of your demonstration of skills than what you've got behind their name. In terms of okay, so you've pulled on thread, you've gone out there, you've exhausted all your free resources. Third point, now you're ready to start pursuing some certifications. I think the questions that I get asked the most, right, in terms of this is which certifications do I go there and pursue? Right, you've decided to make that. Let's not have a financial conversation. There are pros and cons to every cert. My problem with the cybersecurity industry is the human resources teams don't know what certifications make for a good information security or cybersecurity resource. And so they rely on some very, very not good data, right? And I'll give you an example. I've hired hundreds of pen testers throughout my career. I've hired hundreds of incident response analysts. And we as hiring managers are left with a decision about which cybersecurity certs we think make for a good person. And it doesn't matter how many times we tell the HR folks, well, we don't care about certs, we care about experience and relevancy and things like that. They're like, well, we got to have some way to filter folks out. And so we're not having the right conversations with HR to talk about how, folks in this day and age are really able to achieve or seek, the right level of certification that they're, needing to get the job done. And so if you have to choose a cert, or if you have to choose several certs, if you have to choose a path, I would honestly, this is again going to get back to unpopular opinion, right? Is you have to look at what resonates with HR folks, and I would almost take a risk managed approach to how you focus on your career, right? If you're a pen tester, everybody's going to laugh at you when you get CEH. And I say that because I have 3 CEHs. We took several of them in the Air Force, several versions of them, because we were trying to evaluate them as we were building up the functional training unit inside the Air Force. And as soon as you put CEH out there on a chat room or on your LinkedIn profile or something like that, you will get laughed out of almost every conversation. But an HR person sees CEH and says, wow, he's got CEH. He must be really qualified to be on our pen testing team, which all of us in the community are going to laugh at and say, absolutely not. OffSec, offensive security, has their pen testing certification, which is probably one of the hardest in the industry. It's also pretty reasonable from an affordability perspective, but it is very, very narrowly focused on, pen testing. You'll learn almost nothing about a broader range of, cybersecurity related topics. And then you've got, CISA, CISSP, tons of the other ISC squared stuff, which is focused very much on the risk management side of things. And so I think what you really have to weigh when you finally get to a cert decision, I want you to focus in on that, right? There's tons of other things that I would encourage you to do before you ever get to a cert conversation with yourself. But once you get to that cert conversation, I would go look at the job descriptions that are out there for the jobs that you think you want to have. And I would focus on those certs that help you stand out from a resume perspective. If Udemy is great, and I think folks out there who are doing Udemy or Cyber or Pluralsight, they're getting a lot of good education, and it's great resume fodder, but it's going to struggle to catch the eyes of an HR person who is looking at 500 resumes a day and has to, go back to the example I gave before. The hiring manager is going to say, well, if I'm hiring a pen tester, they have to have at least, offensive security or a SANS course. They're not even going to see your Udemy course in there. And so, I'm not saying don't take the Udemy courses or the Cyber or the Pluralsight courses, because you are learning something. But once you get to step 3 of like, how do you get inside of cybersecurity as a career? I think it's at that point in time that you really have to look at, what does it take to make you stand out on a resume perspective? I think the fourth point and the last point that I'll make about, getting involved in cybersecurity from a career perspective is never stop learning. Um, you know, the bad guys never stop learning. Right? And I know that may sound cliche, or it may sound, you know, kind of taboo, or whatever the case is, but the bad guys are out there. They're learning new ways to hack systems. They're learning new ways to beat our defenses. They're learning new ways to get around all the things that we're putting in place. The regulations around the world are changing on a regular basis, right? Between GDPR, CCPA, China and Russia are about to come, with their own, cybersecurity laws, as well. And so, the world around us from a cybersecurity perspective is probably one of the fastest changing digital worlds that exist out there. And so as a result of that, you can't stop learning. Here's what is particularly difficult for me in this space. Cybersecurity has been such a integral part of my life for well over half my life, well over 20 years. That it's not a 9 to 5 job for me. I wake up in the morning and I'm checking Twitter and Reddit and LinkedIn, and I'm reading the news that's out there. I do my job, throughout the day. When I pause from one job, I go to another job and I do more cybersecurity there. And it's not really even a job. I even hesitate to call it a job. As a matter of fact, I tell people frequently that I haven't worked a day, in the last 15 years, that I've actually had a career in cybersecurity because of just how much fun I have in this, in this space. And so as a result, I'm going to do this stream now. We got about 15 more minutes left in this stream, to talk about cybersecurity. But when I get done, I'm going to go do more cybersecurity. I'm not advocating for everybody on the stream to be like, man, that's a bad habit to do. As a matter of fact, there's a thing as a work-life balance that I do not have at all. And I'm a victim of that. But I say all that to say that, cybersecurity changes that frequently, and cybersecurity is constantly improving, constantly evolving at such a rapid pace that, if you sleep on it, you run the risk of missing something. And so find that balance that's right for you, but keep learning. And I would encourage you to keep learning in a way that makes the most sense with you. One of the things that I don't want to overlook as well when I talk about keep learning, right, is the value of networking and the value of, like coming to the stream and asking questions. And we've had several good, chat folks, that have asked questions and things like that. And I'm going to go through the chat here in a little bit and answer some very specific questions. But don't stop networking with folks. Don't stop talking to folks in your peer. Don't stop learning from them. Put the ego to the side. You'll never be the smartest person in this industry, because this industry changes and grows so much. So, just kind of recap right on those 4 things, right? 4 things real quick to get into cybersecurity, right? First and foremost, find that thread and pull on it, right? There is no singular entry point when it comes to getting into cybersecurity. And so find that thread and pull on it. Secondly, research the living heck out of whatever thread it is that you started to pull on. Go to YouTube, go to Google, read documentation, watch videos, do whatever, talk to people in the industry, ask questions, and get all the free information that's out there, and stuff your head with the free information first. After you've stuffed your head with all that free information, then you can kind of go out there and search for a certification that makes sense, and make sure that certification is the most relevant and most applicable to you and what it is you're trying to achieve. And then finally, fourth and foremost, make sure you never stop learning. Learn through mistakes. Fail and fail hard and fail fast. Learn by networking with folks and talking to other people in your industry. Learn by staying up to date on current events and things like that. And so, those are the 4 things that I would say to get into cybersecurity. And so with that, I'm going to scroll back through chat a little bit here, and see some questions. All right. So Great set of questions from chat. This came from the Twitch chat, Confusion96 on Twitch chat. One, what is your position in cybersecurity at the moment? So currently in cybersecurity, I run global security operations for a Fortune 100 company. What that means is I'm in charge of the entire incident response function. I'm in charge of threat intelligence, penetration testing, all the security technologies. That's a common role for where I'm at in my career. Kind of the next role for me moving up is CISO, or Chief Information Security Officer. If I chose to pursue that route. I've had this role at multiple companies in the past. And I've had other types of roles that we can kind of talk about throughout my career. I've been a consultant with a Big Four, PricewaterhouseCoopers. I've worked for an MSSP and helped them build a cybersecurity practice from scratch. And then, of course, I spent years in the United States Air Force, as well. But in addition to that, I also run my own cybersecurity company called Root Access Protection. I believe in bringing more cybersecurity to folks. I saw that there was a need for very, very small businesses. I'm actually like not even trying to score deals, and not trying to be that company that's trying to compete with like the Accentures or the SecureWorks. As I very much believe in bringing realistic cybersecurity to companies that have never thought about it, much in the same way that I'm doing this stream and trying to bring cybersecurity education to everybody that's out there. And so it's something that's very passionate to me, and I don't mind working two jobs, if you will, to try to do that. And so that's a huge passion of mine, is to try to bring cybersecurity to more people and to have it be adoptable to more folks. Let's see here, your second question. Currently learning the basics of a Udemy course, pretty fleshed out. But do you have any other useful free online resources at hand? I tell you what, when I do the video of this course, I'll include some recommendations of some free resources. This is one of the hard questions to answer, and so folks who are listening, who may see this, right, I'll provide what I think are free online resources that I think are awesome. Get back to point number one, right? Figuring out what that thread is and pulling on it. If you can help me kind of know what thread it is that you're pulling on, I can kind of help out with that. I'll give you a case in point. I was talking with another streamer who was watching the stream earlier, and we were chatting on Discord. And he, I'm not going to disclose where he works for, just out of respect for his privacy, but he works overseas in the UK, and he does a lot with radio frequency technology. And we were having a conversation about hack RF and how to do car key replay with hack RF and things like that. And so knowing that that's a thread that he's pulling down in terms of being interested in radio waves and mobile technologies and GSM and CDMA and things like that, I was able to point him towards a lot of the resources to kind of help him expand his knowledge for things like that. And so happy to give you some resources. Just let me know which thread you're pulling down a little bit more, and I can kind of help you walk down that path a little bit better. Question number 3. What are your opinions on using an external cybersecurity agency versus building an in-house team? That is a fantastic question. There's a short answer and a long answer to this, right? The short answer to this is, it's almost always cheaper to outsource something than it is to build it in-house. I say almost always. There is no certainty in this world. It's almost always cheaper to outsource something than it is to build it in-house. However, after you reach a certain point, or once certain things happen in your corporate, structure, it's actually kind of irresponsible for you to outsource security. I'll use Target as an example, and this isn't secret information. This isn't proprietary information. As a matter of fact, you can go read the core documents from Target and see this in their core documents, right? But prior to their big breach that they had, they were outsourcing a lot of their cybersecurity to a third party. And so inside of Target, they had a lot of professionals who were managing third parties who were managing their cybersecurity. And what ended up happening was, because of that dynamic, whenever that third party had come through and said, "Hey, we have a cybersecurity problem that we think is actually pretty significant," you know, you should do something about it. The full-time employees that were on staff weren't skilled or trained to be able to answer that that cybersecurity question, and so ultimately they missed a key indicator that ultimately led to the breach. And so when you look at your growth from a corporate perspective, after a certain amount of time, usually, I'm not going to say, again, not no definitives on this, right? But usually around, $1 to $10 billion worth of revenue as a company, usually when you're publicly traded, or if you have to deal with any regulated data, so finance data, healthcare data, privacy related data, anything like that, those are times where you really need to sit down and really evaluate whether it makes sense for you to outsource or build it internally. Happy to, that's probably a topic that we can probably go in depth on. I could probably bring some professionals in with a couple of different opinions. If that's of interest to the folks in the stream, let me know. And, we could probably bring in some differing opinions on that and have a pretty good conversation around that. Another question, have you ever had to convince a colleague or a client to buy into cybersecurity? What was your approach to this? What was the biggest reasons for someone to buy into cybersec? Yes. Buying into cybersec is a conversation that happens all the time, both professionally as well as just in personal conversations with folks. As a matter of fact, getting buy into cybersecurity is surprisingly ridiculously hard. From a corporate perspective, there's kind of two ways that the buy-in of cybersecurity can go that I think makes it really difficult. You have buy-in upwards, right? So not necessarily at the CISO level, but you've got a CIO oftentimes that you've got to talk to. You've got a CFO that you've often got to talk to. You've got the board of directors that you often have to talk to. And so getting buy-in, at that level is challenging, and I'll kind of break that down in a little bit. But even then, sideways in an organization, when you talk to your peers in IT, when you talk to your peers in the business, when you talk to your peers, in other parts of the company, there's a lot of buy-in that still, even to this day, has to happen in cybersecurity. Cybersecurity, because it's been traditionally tied with IT, is seen as a money loss scenario. There is almost no return on investment visible from a business perspective when you invest in cybersecurity. As a matter of fact, most people view cybersecurity investment as insurance. You don't really know the value that you're getting out of it until there's a cybersecurity event or an incident that's happening. And so, as you can imagine, especially at the CFO level or at the board of directors level, there are constantly conversations about, what is my return on investment for my cybersecurity spend? What am I've given you $10 million, $20 million, $30 million to invest in cybersecurity. Tell me about the threats that I'm blocking. How many threats have I blocked on a daily basis? How many incidents are we seeing? All these metrics that they feel, because of some of the old business practices that they're used to, help them to measure and evaluate the effectiveness that they're getting out of their cybersecurity program, that you as a cybersecurity professional, don't know how that helps, show what's really happening inside of the organization. And so, tons of convincing goes on. And then if you think cross, laterally inside of an organization, the business is hard to convince, cybersecurity, right? To you, if you think about, most business leaders, they're looking at a P&L or a profit and loss sheet, for their business. And on that profit and loss sheet, there's a line for an expense item for cybersecurity. And so when they're challenged by there being counters, above them to reduce their overhead cost, the first place they go to look for those expense items that are easy to cut out and decide if they can cut some of the amount of spend that they've got for some of those expense items. And cybersecurity is on that list of things that they can cut. And so, you're definitely trying to convince, relevancy in terms of cybersecurity. I think one of your other questions, right, is, what's your approach to this? You have to, in addition to being all the things that cybersecurity requires us to be inside of this space, you have got to be a master interpreter, a master linguist, right? You've got to figure out how to speak, 5 different languages inside of an organization. You got to learn how to speak business. You got to learn how to speak risk. You got to learn how to speak insurance. You got to learn how to speak manufacturing. You got to learn how to speak all these different languages inside of an organization, because when you go to have a conversation with somebody in the organization, you've got to figure out how to have that, how you can relate to them, what that return on investment is, because they're going to hand you some money and they're going to expect to get something out of it. And you've got to be able to explain to them what it is that they're going to get out of it. And that's not always the easiest thing to do. As a matter of fact, that's the hardest conversation. I could do a whole stream on solving some of those some of those conversation challenges. I think to the last part of your question, this will be the last question, and looks like in the stream, unless somebody drops one in here, lately. What are the biggest reasons for somebody to buy into cybersecurity? They have that realization that they're going to lose brand reputation, they're going to lose money, or they're otherwise not going to be in a really, really good spot if a cybersecurity event occurs, or when a cybersecurity event occurs. Because as we all know, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. Every company, every person, every individual on this planet will at some point in time suffer a cybersecurity related event in their life or career. And so with that, we're coming up on the top of the hour. This was an amazing flagship stream. We had a lot of great participation on Discord and in chat from everybody who participated. Hopefully you found the topics engaging. Looking forward to seeing everybody back here on Wednesday. Same cyber time, same cyber channel, if that's the thing. We're going to continue to multicast on all the platforms. If you got topics, feel free to leave them in the comments on the relative platform. We definitely scrape those and put together agendas ahead of time. Be looking, over the next day or so for the videos to appear on YouTube, so that you can go back and review that content. But otherwise, thanks everybody for joining. Stay safe out there, and we'll see you in a couple of days.